Hello there, and welcome to the Tunes From Doolin Podcast, an Irish traditional music interview series presented by myself, Charles Monod, and featuring guests from County Clare and beyond who come and visit us here in Doolin. On each episode of the show, we are guided by tunes picked and played by our guests, and we talk about various topics related to traditional music, such as sources of inspiration, repertoire, style, memories, and much, much more. If you'd like to support this podcast and the Tunes From Doolin project in general, you can head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/tunesfromdoolin, where you can sign up and choose a support level that you can sustain. It doesn't have to be much. Even a cup of coffee per month really goes a long way. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for your support. Our guest for this episode is Tom Delany, Uilleann piper based in Dingle, County Kerry, and a regular visitor to Doolin. Hope you enjoyed the tunes and our chat with Tom, and make sure to stick around till the end if you'd like to know more about Tom and how to keep up with his music. Enjoy. Thank you so much for those tunes, Tom, and welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure to have you up here in Doolin. Beautiful tunes. What did you play for us?
So these were 3 jigs. The first tune is a tune called Jim O'Connor's, and it's a jig that I learnt from a friend of mine down in Dingle called Jeremy Spencer. He's a great fiddle player. And the second tune is a tune I picked up along the way, probably when I was in Ennis. It's called My Former Wife, and I love that tune because it was made popular by the playing of the piper Bernard Delany, who moved to the Chicago area in the early 1900s. So it was collected by O'Neill's, and I just like the fact that another Delany piper played it. And then the last tune is a jig called Kilglass Lake, and that was written by a fiddle player who lives in County Meath called John McAvoy.
Yeah, great. It's funny you played that My Former Wife, because it's actually a tune I associate with another piper which I know you're great friends with, Blackie O'Connell. Tell me, how did you put them together?
Well, I put them together for an album that I'm releasing very soon. So it's the opening track of the CD. And yeah, I don't know, I just thought they went really well, and the more I looked into them, I kind of played them in separate sets and things like that. But the more I looked into them, the more I kind of liked the little history and the people that they reminded me of and all that kind of stuff. So I said it'd be a nice set to put together. Yeah, and they're very pipes friendly as well. They're great on the pipes. They work well. They work really well. I got the last tune from our friend Blackie. I think it was Blackie that played that for me the first time, Kilglass Lake. Yeah, so they just came together as a set. We've been playing it for a while now.
Yeah, so that's the opening track of your CD.
That's it. It's the opening track of the new album called The Lark's Call, and it's an album I've been working on for the last year or so.
It's a solo album, isn't it?
So it is a solo album, I suppose, in the sense that I'm playing on all the sets and I picked the sets, but there's plenty of guests on it, different friends and that are helping me out. So Alan Murray is playing bouzouki and guitar on it, and Caroline Keane's playing concertina, Brian O'Loughlin's playing flute, Laura Kerr's playing fiddle, Conor Lyons playing bowron. I'm probably forgetting somebody as well, but yeah, a load of different people that are helping me out, so it's lovely.
Great. No, can't wait for it, because I'd say most people did know you maybe through the band Four Winds.
Yeah,
you've one album with the band. Yeah,
we did one album back in 2015 now, I think something like that. That was our first proper big recording. Yeah, so that was the kind of the start of the big professional journey and the touring and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and after that you did the album with Caroline Keane on concertina, lovely duet.
Yeah, that's
that's the first solo album of Tom going for it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's me, myself, and I throwing myself out there.
When did you decide to do it? How did that came about?
I don't know. I think the last about 2 or 3 years ago I started kind of putting stuff together, and a few people had said to me, "Oh, you should do an album, you should do this, you should do that." So I had a very strong kind of ideas about what I like in music and in the genre within Irish traditional music. I'd be very much influenced by all the folk revival era, and all that kind of stuff. So the Planksties and the Botty bands and the Chieftains, and so I kind of wanted, that's the music that I like to play, and a few people that's suggested to me, well, why don't you do, your own thing? So I said, well, why not? When I started playing with Alan Murray, it kind of made sense just to have someone to bounce ideas off, and he was great for the whole process of the album. He plays guitar and bouzouki,
and Alan joined Four Winds as well. Is that how did you meet?
I think I met Alan back in Ennis or in Milltown or some place like that, through different friends at sessions when I was living in Ennis, and I loved his approach of backing. He's a great bouzouki player, he's a great guitar player, and a brilliant singer too. So we started playing. He was coming over. Yeah, he came over for the flas and all that kind of stuff. So we started playing sessions together and had a really good time and got on well. And so we started playing together then. He did a couple of trips abroad with myself and Caroline. and and then we said we were looking for a bouzouki player singer. So Alan jumped in after Derry Farrell.
Great. And obviously the last year and a half with COVID, it's been difficult to do any kind of project, concert and all that, but I suppose the solo album, was it a COVID project, lockdown project, or did you start that before? Or
That's a good question. Well, I had started before COVID got to us. I had about 3 or 4 tracks recorded with Alan. We were recorded at Donna Hennessy studio down in Dingle, where I live, and we'd done a couple of days work, and we'd started something. So I suppose thankfully I had a little bit done, so it kind of gave me a bit of a push, and it kind of, if I had started from cold, it was hard for musicians to stay motivated, throughout the whole pandemic. So I was glad that I had a little bit of something on, well, look, this has started, here's an opportunity to keep going, so I finished it up well I could during the pandemic, and luckily enough, Caroline obviously lives in Dingle with me, and a few of the other guests are in the Dingle area, so they were able to hop into the studio too, and Alan was able to record the rest of his parts on the from the States.
Yeah, but it totally makes sense, as in you had decided to do the album before all that happened, you'd started, so the ball was rolling.
That's it.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I can't wait. I'm very excited to hear it, because we know each other a long time, and you play, you see people in sessions, duet albums and groups, bands. It's always very different when you take the solo album route, because you're fully in charge of everything.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like the genre within Irish music that you like in particular. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, so I grew up listening to traditional music on CDs. My dad is Irish and he's a musician, but I grew up in France, so a lot of the music that I would have heard would have been either from Dad or from recordings that Dad listened to, and obviously the Botty Band and Planxty and the Chieftains were some of the records of choice, in our household. So I listened to a lot of those, and to me, that's the music that I really like. It's that genre. It's the excitement that the 70s brought to Irish music, the revival of the interest in folk music and traditional culture, and with a touch of fusion and a few nuances of rock and roll and things like that really appealed to me. I think the overall aesthetics of the 70s really appealed to me. I just love it in general, So I would have listened to a lot of Planxty, a lot of in pipes in particular.
I was just going to say, did the love for the pipes come from those bands, like Liam O'Flynn with Planxty and Keenan with the Botty Band?
Keenan with the Botty Band, I suppose, and Davy Spillane maybe with Moving Hearts, and so that and Paddy Maloney with the Chieftains. They would have been the big sounds that I would have heard. And bear in mind that my dad didn't play pipes, and for him, he's kind of a folk musician more first and foremost. So he would have sang songs and sang ballads, and then that facilitated, room for a few tunes. But it was all the songs that were the most important thing. So then he played the fiddle and the banjo. But the pipes were a very purist instrument. It was far-fetched for. I don't think he ever expected his son to go down that traditional route.
What was? Can you remember when the first time you said to your parents, "I'd like to play the pipes"?
I think my dad said, "Are you sure?" And then he probably went, "Where on earth am I going to find a set of Uilleann pipes for this fella now?" And he handed me back my tin whistle, and he said, "Keep practicing on this, and if you still want to play the pipes in a year's time, we'll talk about it again." And we did. I just kept at the tin whistle for a while, and a year later I still wanted to play the pipes. So he kind of went, "Okay, well, this guy seems to be pretty serious." So he found a set of Uilleann pipes in Wales from a maker called Alan No, it was actually a set from a maker called Addison. And we picked it up and we started playing together. Actually, Dad decided to learn as well. So
turn around.
Yeah, well, he just went, well, we might as well get to grips with this together. So it was our little adventure together, myself and my dad, challenging each other and trying to learn the next tune in the book before the other one, you know.
Yeah. And how old were you then?
It's probably about 13, I think.
Okay, and so you played the whistle for a couple of years before that?
Yeah, probably about 2 or 3 years. Not very seriously. I tried different instruments. I did a bit of piano lessons and stuff like that, which I didn't really take to. And then just a tin whistle. Yeah, Dad would teach me a tune now and then, a couple of handy polkas or little.
Yeah.
But once I wanted to learn the pipes, I got more serious at the whistle.
Okay. And how was that, like, you know, being in France, growing up as a kid, as a teenager? I mean, I doubt it was like the cool kid on the block.
I was always the cool kid on the block. Of course I was a cool kid on the block. No, I was not. I remember being 14 and talking to my friend who had... his birthday was around the same time as mine. And we were comparing presents for our 14th birthday. And he got a PlayStation. And I had to explain to him that I got a set of bagpipes. And he was kind of scratching his head over it. He just didn't really make sense. But yeah,
you were delighted.
I was delighted. He was delighted. Everybody was delighted.
Happy days.
I didn't have a PlayStation. I had a set of Uilleann pipes, and that's what I wanted, and he got what he wanted. So,
yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was just a thing that, yeah. And then there was a few organisations and folk clubs and things like that around that organised little festivals maybe during the summer. We didn't go to a lot of festivals or anything, but...
Well, I was going to ask, I mean, finding a teacher, first of all, must have been quite challenging.
There was no teacher. It was... there was a couple of pipers that would have been friends with my dad that might have popped by and given me a couple of tips. People like Christian Vevre and people like that. And then, thankfully, at the time, technology was booming and you could buy a VHS video from the Pipers Club from the Uilleann with Volume 1, the Arts of Uilleann Piping Volume 1 and the Arts of Uilleann Piping Volume 2. And
was that your first like tutorial?
Yeah, there was a few. Well, I got a few books as well, like and things like that. But it got serious with that because it was a bit like online lessons nowadays. But you just
on VHS.
You had to put the VHS, and you had to remember where you were at what, and they came with a little book, and you just learned the tune. And Nolik McCarthy and Gay McKeown were there teaching you how to do a cut on an A or how to do a pop on a high note or something.
Different times, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It was great though. You could rewind and fast forward, and it was good fun. Like,
yeah. Do you want to play something else for us?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm gonna play an air, a tune called "The Wounded Hussar," which is the melody of a song that I learnt from the singing of Frank Hart, the Dublin singer and song collector. And it's a tune that apparently the melody was written by Turlough O'Carlin and the words were written by a Scottish poet, and it tells the story of a lady called Adelaide who goes to find her wounded husband who is just about to die during the Napoleon War in France. And it's a very sad song, but it's a very beautiful song. And
will you sing us the words as well?
I won't. And then I'm going to play a little reel afterwards called The Enchanted Lady.
Lovely. Off you go. I love that slow air. Like, it's got to be one of my favorite tunes.
It's a cool tune, all right. Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. You'd have probably heard Tony McMahon playing that.
Yeah, he's the one I associate the tune with. Where did you learn it?
As I said, Frank Hart. I mean, Frank Hart's. Anyone out there who hasn't heard Frank Hart, go and listen to Frank Hart. He was a song collector based in Dublin, and he collected hundreds of songs, all great songs, and he was a great singer himself. But he recorded a few albums that were produced by Tom Delany, and they all had a different topic or a different subject. So there's a full album of songs from 1798 and the French Revolution, and there is a full album of songs of immigration, and there's a full album of street Dublin ballads, and there's a full album of something else I can't remember, worker songs, and like songs of mining and digging and stuff like that.
Comprehensive collection.
Amazing. And I do a bit of singing and a bit of bouzouki playing and stuff, and I mean, it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so that's where you associate this tune anyway.
That's where I got the Wounded Hussar. But there's loads of lovely versions of it. There's another instrumental version that's slightly different that Seamus Ennis used to play as well, and it's related to the song as well, but the melody kind of goes somewhere different. But I kind of wanted to play the song air, really.
Yeah, nice. And I suppose we didn't mention it, but you're playing an unusual set of pipes today.
Yeah, so I'm playing a C set of pipes, which I am very fortunate to have. They were made by Alan Fremont, and they were gifted to me by one of my old teachers and a hero of mine, a guy called Marc Guillou, who's a French piper, a fantastic musician, and a guy who's very, very good to me since I started playing, since I first met him. So I'm just coming to grips with it, and I love it.
It really has that depth. Like, I don't know, it's very spiritual. Like, it just has that extra little thing than the concert pitch. It really is. I think like the concert pitch are great, and they're really good, and they're the standard instrument and the standard key. But when you're going into the sound of the flat set, it's closer to the original sound of the pipes. You know, you're starting to enter the bagpipes world, and you're starting to enter ancient music and vernacular sounds. You know, that kind of I find really appealing. But they're beautiful, but they're very typical to pipes. You know, and are they very different to play?
They would be. There's a bits of technique and stuff, like, because you're really focusing on the tone, and there's a lot more you can do as far as sounds are concerned. Like, if you just think of the actual sounds that you can produce with the instrument, so there's a massive richness of options that you can do there. But that requires some technique that you mightn't come across when you're playing the concert pitch, or not as much maybe. It's really about exploring the tones you can get out of it. So cross fingerings and opening up the different fingerings and changing your variations around. I've been kind of working on that, where you kind of have to diversify your playing even more. Okay,
and let's say, would you be drawn to different kind of tunes because of the set of pipes? Are you getting more into slow airs or slower tunes, slower tempo anyway?
That's a good point. I think the fact that they're a bigger set of pipes, so they're bigger than the normal. So people naturally would have a tendency to play a little bit slower because it's a bit more of a stretch, a different approach. But the tone and the frequency is definitely lower, so it kind of creates more of a kind of a mellower buzz, kind of a thing. So you might be drawn to kind of slower music, and again, because of the tone, you would be kind of drawn towards maybe slower airs. And it's also, you know, when you think of Irish music and think of pipes in general, the Uilleann pipes only came into concert pitch in the 1900s, so they were actually redesigned to match the fiddles and the accordions, but before that, up to like when they were actually invented before pre-famine, they were in flat pitch. Okay, so they were mellower. They were a really mellow instrument. So you're kind of becoming more aware of the sound of the instrument in the previous generation, 1800s, 1700s. So maybe the repertoire, that might that kind of starts interesting you then is what's the repertoire that goes with that pitch, what's the repertoire that goes with those instruments. So yeah, you do I find the repertoire, then you start thinking as well of using the full instrument, using the drones, and stuff like that. So not all the tunes that are played in traditional music would suit the pipes anyway, in general, as even if it's a concert pitch but then when you're playing the flat set, you're really kind of, because you're working on the tone, you try to find a repertoire that matches the tone and matches the richness of the drones, and what can you use and what can you, try to make the most out of it.
It's funny that you mentioned the origin of the pipes, like that the original instrument was in C, because when I said they kind of have a spiritual sound, I suppose the word that came to mind then when you mentioned that was ancient.
Yeah. There is and even C wouldn't even be the pitch, because if you think of the instruments weren't pitched. It was all about the tone. People didn't have the technology to learn about the frequencies to decide. Like your A was in 442. It was decided that an A was going to be a 442 frequency, but that was way after. That was way after people were playing the Uilleann pipes
or any other instrument.
Exactly. So for that matter, if you weren't playing, in particular, if you were not playing a group instrument, so such as the Uilleann pipes, which is a solo instrument, the pitch, it was all about the tone. It wasn't about the pitch. It wasn't about being in tune. It was about playing an instrument that had a beautiful sound.
As long as you were in tunes with yourself.
That's all that matters,
And did you record the C pipes on the new album?
I did. I played 3 selections on the album. I played a slow air that was requested by my friend Mark, a tune called Hour on the Lower, or also known as Valencia Harbour. And I played a set of jigs with Caroline Keane on concertina and Camille Philippe on mandolin. And I also played a set of a single jig into a highland, into a reel of my own composition.
Lovely. I can't wait to hear it, because there's the pipes in D, pipes in C. I'm sure is there a set on the whistle, or is that a secret?
There's a couple of sets on the whistle. I don't want to give too much away either. There's plenty there anyway for anyone who enjoys that kind of stuff. I hope anyway. Yeah. I had great fun doing it.
Yeah, no, can't wait. I also love the story of the pipes themselves, that you got them from your friend Mark. There's an emotional connection with the instrument as well. How much do you think about it when you're playing them?
I think about it all the time. I do. I think about it all the time, because music is something that's passed on from one generation to another. Music is something that you never own, and you can take it, you can care for it, and then you just have to pass it on. And what people do, I think, if people can do that with instruments, I think they should. I think that it's as far as I'm concerned, I can see. To me, it has Irish music in general has a very emotional connection. I find it can be a time traveling machine. We're playing tunes from the early 1800s or the 1700s, or on an instrument that was given to you by someone by the previous generation who taught you these tunes. So it's mad. It's a mad concept that you could be sitting here in this house, this beautiful house in Doolin, and you close your eyes and you're recreating the tones and the sounds, or trying to recreate or emulate the sounds of 200 years ago that would have been played in this very same house, on a repertoire from the same era, from a similar era. It's
mad.
It's mental.
It is crazy.
And it's great. It's amazing,
I suppose that's the beauty of music. Like, the word spiritual came up already, but there's a lot more to it than just playing a bunch of notes one after the other in the right order, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it feel to you sometimes like is it a heavy weight on your shoulder being a traditional musician? Is there like a responsibility?
I think you do have a responsibility to do your best, and I think you have a responsibility to pass it on. After that, that's all you can do, and I think, like everything else, I find as a human, or all you can do is your best, but you have to cherish what you've been given. You can, music evolves. It's folk music, folk being the word, the folk, the people. So it's the music of the people. So the music has to evolve with the people, with the generations, but at the same time, it has to be valued. And there's a fine line. And I think it is a bit of pressure to a certain extent. But I think, like everything else, if it's handled with care, there's no reason why anything bad should happen.
I think that's one of the things I love most about Irish music, because in the introduction I mentioned, your band Four Winds, and I assume a lot of people would be familiar with that. And it's very creative. It's very, it's a modern band, and it's like you said, there's that fine line where you kind of have to balance where the music comes from, but you're also giving it direction as to where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And I always admire musicians that have, it's like some people have a foot on each side. One foot is deeply rooted in the tradition, and then they're taking the step towards creating something new and different. And I love people who have that ability to do both and do it very well.
I think that's the game, isn't it? Like, I think, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's what I like to do. It's what I like to think I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to be true to myself and my creativity, and work and play with people who have, who are engaging with that creativity and are helping me, and I'm helping them, but at the same time doing it in a respectful way that kind of acknowledges the work that's been done before me, and like, I'm not here to stay, but the music is here to stay. Yeah. So it's a bit like the planet, we're only borrowing it, so just mind it for the next guys as well. You can use it, everybody's allowed to use it, but just
handle with care.
Exactly.
Savage. Will we go into another set of tunes, maybe?
Okay, I'll do a hornpipe called "The Pleasures of Hope," and this is a great tune I learnt from a good friend of mine called Conor Lamb, who is in a band called Ravelled, and he's a great piper, and himself and his partner Deirdre, who's a great guitarist, are good friends of mine, and we've been away together a number of times in very exotic and unusual places to play our pipes and sing our songs. And he taught me that tune, and he got it from the playing of the great Liam O'Flynn. And then I'm going to play two reels, Corney's Coming and the Ravelled Hank of Yarn, and these are tunes that I would associate with the giant of piping locally, Woody Clancy.
Lovely. And we'll see if we go back to a few of those exotic places you've been playing music in. I love the sound of that flat set, man.
It's great fun. I love it too. As I said, the more I play them, the more I discover what they're able to do, and it just brings you to a whole different space.
I think I'll have to get myself a C concertina at some stage, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, very good. It's just lovely. I think changing the pitch and changing the key of tunes and things like that, it just makes you think differently about them. 'Cause
they almost sound like new tunes.
They do. Yeah. They really do. Even if you transpose, I like doing that sometimes, where you transpose a tune from a key to a different key, and because you've been, you get so accustomed to the sound of your instrument and the key that you're playing in, the key of the tune, and then 15 years later, you just try this mad combination of things, and you're like, oh wow. My god! And because of the what's kind of cool about the whether it's the flat set or the pipes or anything, it's the limitations that are challenging, that force you to reinvent things. So even if you change the key of a tune, there might be some ornaments or stuff like that you could do in a certain key,
but
you can't do them in whatever key, so you have to think of something else, and then you realize you've all these other possibilities.
You can do a roll in different places.
Exactly.
That's brilliant.
And it's always great fun, keeps it fresh.
That last tune is really it's a common session tune, like you hear it a lot, but it always brings me back. Same as you, it's Willie Clancy all the way.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's a great Willie Clancy tune. I spent years and years listening to Willie Clancy. It's funny actually, because I don't think I used to like Willie Clancy that much when I was growing up. As I was saying to you, like I used to listen to a lot of records, and the Botty Band and Planksty and Davy Spillane would have been my pipers of choice, especially Atlantic Bridge, with drums and electric guitars. And
I was going to say, I'd say your dad didn't have the piping collection of
well,
Willie
he actually,
Clancy.
Surprisingly enough, he did. He had a few Seamus Ennis recordings and a few Willie Clancy, the pipering of Willie Clancy Volume 1 and 2. And at that time, he just played them over and over in his car, in the van, like when we used to go in the car together. Like it was Willie Clancy, and they're great. They're absolutely amazing. Like the playing is phenomenal, and what I love about Willie Clancy's playing is there's a rogueness. Like there's a cute, there's fun, there's mischief there. You can tell he takes himself seriously, but he just loved having fun, and you can hear there's a lot of fun being had.
Yeah, I think you can hear it, and there's also there's a few clips on YouTube or in the archives in Dublin. You can actually see it on his face.
Oh
he's bold.
Yeah, absolutely. But then at the same time, there's great respect for the music, and there's really great attention to details. Like if you listen to him playing, I think there was a recording. I remember listening to a recording of him playing. Maybe it was like the Langstrom Pony or something, one of those jigs anyway. And I paid attention to his cuts, and I started listening to the record completely inside out, if you know what I mean. So I was listening more to the cuts than to the melody.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And he was cutting the notes in time, so he was keeping an internal time in the tune with his cut. So his ornament was basically like a ticking clock.
Yeah, brilliant.
It was like, how would you do? Like, it takes a serious amount of work and concentration to achieve that. And you can hear, and then once you've noticed, you can't unhear it, and all you can hear is deedle die deedle die deedle die deedle die deedle die deedle die, and then the background.
Yeah, spot on
every time.
Yeah, he's that genius.
That's brilliant.
Well, obviously there's a lot of work. We've had this conversation before, not on the show, but there's always an amount of work that goes into your practice, and how much you played is a part of talent, of course, like in anything, but when you let it flow and you're not overthinking it, I'm pretty sure Willie Clancy wasn't thinking that his cuts were every time.
Yeah, well, maybe he was able to do it in flow, but in order to do it in flow, he had practiced it beforehand.
Yeah.
I think there's two. I'm kind of coming to terms with this behind this whole theory is where people talk about the flow and the way people play music and without mistakes and all that. You can do that, but in order to do that, you have to practice very hard. And then keep the things separate. And when you're performing, and I think that's what a conversation we were having yesterday, is the difference between performance practice and performance. You've performance practice. You can make as many mistakes as you want. You can get it right. When you're performing, you need to be able to get your mind off it and let it come out.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. And it's about, I think I was listening to a masterclass by jazz pianist Kenny Werner, and he was saying, who's a great teacher, and he's great for giving people advice and help on their performance practice and music. And he was saying that kind of, that's the idea, is that you need to be able to play to your ability and forget about your ego. When you're playing, when you're performing, you're not there to challenge yourself. It's too late.
Yeah.
If you want to challenge yourself, you do it at home. You do it in your room. You do it in your practice room. You do it every day. But when you're playing, it's too late. When you're performing, you're there to show what you can do. And if you don't, that's when you start making mistakes.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot when, like, on the YouTube channel for Tunes From Doolin, on the website, I have people asking a lot of times advice on what tunes they can learn, and they want new people seem always to want to learn new tunes. That's great when you do your practice and you build up your repertoire, but then when it comes to actually going out and playing in front of people, or even if it's a small, with your family at Christmas or whatever, go play the tunes that you know how to play. And you kind of have to make sure you don't get confused between the two.
Absolutely. I think, like, what Kenny Werner was saying in one of those, like, I've become obsessed with this guy, but he's great. He wrote a great book called Effortless Mastery, and like, you're always learning. Obviously, there's always a way to improve. And
I'll put a link to that book.
Yeah, it's a great book. And like, I should listen to my own advice. Obviously, I'm not preaching at all, because it's something that I'm working on. But he was saying that he categorizes his work into different blocks or boxes, and there's the tune you're learning, and there's the tune you're practicing, and there's the pieces that you're performing. Mm-hmm. And he said at any given point, you should never skip a category. So once you've been learning it, you have to practice it. Once you've practiced it, eventually you can perform it. But it takes a long time to make those three. Mm. And I think he was I can't remember exactly, but he was saying, if you're performing it and if it's already made its way to the third box, well, you can't bring it back to the first box, because it's already there. You can bring it back to the second box. You can bring it back to practice time. Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't bring it. There's no way it's going back to learning, otherwise, So he was explaining this whole system, and he was saying, and he was also saying that it's the ego that gets in the way. Your ego and we're all guilty of that as humans. You want to impress. You want to show
your newest.
Yeah, you want to show your new tune, your new moves, your new, your new trick, or you want to impress, your best friend or the
great musician that you're playing with that day.
Yeah, exactly. Or your granny, who doesn't play anyway, but you want to impress her. You want to play well. But if you want to impress her, play the stuff that you know. I
think it's great.
Oh,
great
it's
advice, and not only for like beginners. I think it's a reminder that throughout our journey as musicians, wherever you are on the journey, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, like if you're already a great musician, the same process still applies, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a reminder, and it applies on different levels. Obviously, like, it's the kind of stuff that you would tell a 10-year-old learning an instrument. Don't play your latest tune in front of your granny. Go play the one you know. Mm. But it applies to everyone, and it's nice to be reminded of it. I'm completely in that frame of mind at the moment, where I'm being reminded of what I know and what I don't know, and
that's probably a result of lockdown as well, because we haven't played, haven't been able to play with other people a lot. So that's what's happened to me anyway. When I've forgotten, like I forgot some of the tunes that I would usually play. Not forgot them, but you don't play them the exact same way you used to play them. And that's probably because they were actually, I didn't master them back then. I thought I had them, but if I'm not able to play them now straight away, that means they weren't completely absorbed.
Maybe they weren't in the right box, you know.
Yeah.
So you have to bring them back. Absolutely. I think lockdown has been very interesting because I thought I'd learn loads of material, you know, I'd learn new tunes and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't really.
I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, I did learn a few, which I forgot just as fast.
Yeah.
But it's funny that some tunes really, really stayed.
So what's your lockdown tune? Can you think of a tune that stayed with you?
That I learned, or if I had to think of one tune
that you associate with lockdown?
The Boyne Hunt.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's just a reel that I've played since I was 13 or 14 years of age.
We should play that actually at the end of the episode.
It's a great tune, and it's just one that my dad plays, and I've always played it, and I've always liked it. And lockdown or no lockdown, I always enjoyed it. And a lot of the tunes actually that are on the album are kind of tunes like that, you know, and that's why I picked those. A lot of those tunes, they're tunes that have stayed with me for the last 20 years.
And going back to what we were saying, all those tunes that you've been playing for many years, they are all in the third box.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Certainly,
I hope so too.
I'd say they might make a trip back to the second box now and then just to stay on top. But
great. Well, pleasure to have you in Doolin again. You can come up anytime, Tom.
Thanks very much. I might just do that. I might hold you to that one.
I'm sure you will. Will you play a tune before we go?
Might as well.
Nice. Thank you so much, Tom, and see you later.
Thanks a lot.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks again so much to Tom Delany for coming on the show. If you'd like to keep up with Tom and his music, make sure to visit his website tomdelany.com and to like his page on Facebook. All the links are in the description. His album will be coming out soon, so keep an eye out for it. It will be great. Thank you again so much for listening to the Tunes From Doolin podcast, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes. It would be very helpful if you could tell your friends about the show too, share it on social media, and feel free to visit the Patreon page if you would like to support. If you would like to know more about the Tunes From Doolin project, you can check out the website and YouTube channel. You can also email me at tunesfromdoolin@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again, and see you at the next episode.